Hi. This is Amaya again, with a little update. A lot has been going on since I last updated, but nothing I could ever imagine. It all started when I participated in an ancestry research and development program for my university. Finding out that the man who raised me wasn't my bio dad wasn't as shocking as I first thought. When I think about it, I always knew something was, well, off about it. Even though he was a loving, caring father, we obviously looked nothing alike. I guess, subconsciously, I always knew something wasn't quite right. But when it was finally revealed with undeniable proof, I was forced to accept the reality of it all. He is still my father who I love very much, and he loves me too. But learning that my mother had been married to my bio dad once upon a time, and was forced to divorce because his family did not approve of their marriage, well, that was the real shocker. It wasn't until I entered the ancestry program that I found out the truth behind it all. Apparently my real father had been looking for me and my mom his entire life. He never stopped looking. When he did an ancestry DNA test, it was his last-ditch effort to find me. He had hoped that, when I got older, I would be curious about my genealogy and follow suit. He was right about that, but unfortunately it was 3 years too late. I used to think I would hate him and tell him as much when I got a chance to meet him face to face. But the more I learn of the man he was, I now know that's not true. I probably would have adored him. Just from the things I'm now learning about his character, he would have been someone I'd be proud of. And even if I might not have been able to call him dad, because the man who raised me has that honor, I still would have loved him and maintained a relationship with him. But for his extended family, not so much. They're horrible people. Ever since it's been confirmed that I am his daughter and can rightfully claim my inheritance, they've been fighting me tooth and nail. I'm not going to lie, some days I just want to pack it up and leave all of this behind. The truth is, I miss my former life. It was a life of my choosing. I was permitted to follow my own pursuits and do the things that I loved. But now, I feel like I'm in a gilded trap. It's all glitz and glamour on the outside, but on the inside it's rotten to the core. My new family is proof of that. As soon as I was announced the new CEO of Meditech Corp, the proverbial ish hit the fan. Under different circumstances, when you find out you have an entire family of aunts, uncles, and cousins, you'd think you'd be invited to family gatherings, reunions and things of the like. But in my case, it was a little more complicated than that. These people hated me. All except for one cousin, Lucas. He actually seemed to be genuine in wanting to get to know me. So far, he's been the one giving me the lowdown on the family drama, the who's who of the clan. And what I've learned about them thus far, let's just say, it's not good. When my father became ill, his younger brothers began their infighting, dueling to see who was going to be appointed the next head of the family. That distinction went to the owner of the company because everyone's livelihood, or at least their income, depended on it. The one who held this post was the most powerful in the family, for obvious reasons. Yeah, that one would be me. My biggest opposition right now is my second uncle, who is the oldest in the family. The youngest of the two remaining brothers don't really care. He only cares if the checks keep rolling in with no major cuts in his stipend. Even his 2 children don't seem to care. They're very materialistic but have no real ambitions in life. As long as the money keeps rolling in, they don't care who's in charge. Lucas being one of them. But like I said, he's pretty chill and laid back. So, the day it was announced that Meditech Corp was going to be developing a prototype for my now fiancé's invention, all hell broke loose. Even Jackson was at a loss for what was going on. But after doing a little digging, I found out what was going on. Jackson's father was the key. We made a request to meet with him about it, and reluctantly he agreed. When we arrived to Jackson's family home, my reception was much the same. His mother met us on the front porch, waving and greeting. His sister, Nina, was sitting in the doorway in her wheelchair with a broad smile on her face. I liked Nina and we became very close over time. She was the only one who knew me and Jackson's secret that we were engaged. We hadn't announced it to his family because his father was dead set against it, but it was my plan to win him over, in time. Still, this uphill battle was more difficult than I first believed. He was a stubborn old man. Enough of that. Get inside, his father said briskly. What do you want to talk to me about? Let's get it over with, my show is coming on soon. I attempted to greet him properly, but he just grunted and walked away. Jackson and his mom and sister just gave me a slight smile and shook their heads, as if to say, don't let him bother you. Then we all walked in behind him. If you don't mind, I have a few questions to ask you, I started. There was no point in beating around the bush with him. No pleasantries, no small talk. Well, what do you want to know? He asked me this as he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands over his belly. What is your relationship to my family? He leaned forward and placed his elbow on his knee and scowled at me. Look, if you came here to get praise from me, you can get out now. We have a long history and you know better than I do about your family. Look, Dad, Jackson started, but he was cut off by his father. You. Stay out of this. I know you feel obligated because she helped you launch your invention, but she's one of them. He said and pointed to me. When Jackson was about to defend me, I looked to him and gave him a slight shake of the head. He bristled for a moment, but remained silent. In reality, I don't know them well at all. To be honest, I just met them this year for the first time, I said, trying to assuage his anger. How does that make any sense? You can't fool me. If you're the CEO of Meditech Corp, that means you're fully ensconced in that family. You're one of them, he argued. I may be the CEO, but I assure you, I have nothing to do with that family. It was because of my father that I inherited the company in the first place. I never even had a chance to meet him, even once, I defended. It's true, Dad, Jackson put in. You, shut up. She's only trying to trick you. Her family is well known for tricking people by making them believe they have their best interest, then they steal everything you've worked hard to accomplish. And to make matters worse, you'll never be able to fight them. I know, he said through heavy breath. Jackson's mother came in at this point. I don't know if it was strategic on her part, or coincidence, but she placed a platter of fruit on the table in front of us. It was enough to allow her husband to collect himself and calm down. What do you mean? What happened between you and my family? I asked this question again, but I tried to keep my tone gentle and calm. Do you think Jackson is a genius on his own? He got that from me. I spent the first few years out of university working for Meditech Corporation. His nose was flaring and his rage was resurfacing again. I wanted to calm him, but I needed to know what happened, so I didn't interrupt. Jackson's mom put a slice of pear in his mouth, allowing him the time he needed to compose himself. He chewed as he breathed deeply, trying to contain his growing anger at the memory. Your grandfather stole my invention. And when I tried to take him to court, he dragged it out so long, I finally went bankrupt and couldn't pursue it any further. But that was all his evil plan. He used his money and power to silence me, knowing I didn't have the resources to fight it out in court. Do you mind telling me which invention it was? It was a robotic arm used for delicate surgeries, he spat out. It made your company millions, probably billions of dollars. And my family didn't receive one red cent. I will never forgive him for what he did to me and my family. I looked over to Jackson and he looked surprised by the revelation. It seemed as though his father never voiced this to him. But his mother looked sullen. She knew all too well what happened to her husband at the hand of my family. Even still, she was always nice to me, even when it was learned that I came from these vile, despicable people. I didn't want to make any promises, but I assured him as the new CEO, I was going to look into it. He just harumphed me and told us to leave. His show was coming on and he had given me all of the spare time he was willing to give. On the rare occasion I went into the office, I received a visit from my second uncle. And though his countenance was pleasant when he barged into my office, I could sense there was something nefarious lurking just beneath his greeting. You must be Amaya, he said as he sat down across from my desk. And you are. I asked this, but I knew who he was. My assistant had given me a dossier on all of the family members with their pictures. But I was just using this as a humbling moment. I didn't want him to think his power and notoriety preceded him. He bristled a bit, but kept his composure. He was skilled, I remember thinking. I'm your Uncle Joseph. My apologies for not coming to meet you sooner. I know you're a very busy man, so no apologies are necessary. What can I help you with? I tried to match his cool, but civil tone. I hear you're asking around about the surgical robotic arm. Is there a reason for it? He asked, still maintaining his cool demeanor. I replied, how did our company come across this particular invention? Who is it? I'd like to ask a few questions about the mechanics of it, I lied. It was someone I went to university with years ago. I haven't seen him in decades. For all I know, he may already be dead, he said nonchalantly. What about his family? Certainly we must have record of them. Aren't we compensating them for his invention? My uncle became stiff at this question, though he tried to play it off. I don't know if he had a family or not. Then he placed his finger in the air as if to recall something. Yes, I remember now. I recall hearing he died in a car crash years ago. As you may know, that was a long time ago, so I don't remember all of the details. Tragic. I tried to control my facial expressions, but I'm certain I failed miserably. I was always told you could read what I was thinking, just by looking at me. If this was true, then my uncle knew I thought his story was full of bull. He rose from his chair and looked at me saying, don't be a stranger. Call my wife and visit sometime. We'd love to have dinner with you soon. You are my niece after all. I have a lot to catch up on, as you may well know. But when I'm free, I'd love to meet all of the family, I said. But that too was a lie. From all I was learning about them so far, I didn't want to have anything to do with them. They were shameless, horrible people. However, what I had planned for them, I was going to have a powwow with them all, soon enough. I hope they are prepared for the changes that was soon to come. In my mind, this was going to be the justice they deserved. A few weeks later, I set up a meeting with the family and Jackson's father and mother. I didn't invite Jackson because I didn't want to concern him in matters that didn't pertain to him directly. And though I needed his moral support, it seemed too prejudiced since he was related to the parties involved. For his future protection, I excluded him from the meeting. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you're looking at it, I never had a formal introduction to my father's family. Once it was announced that I would be taking his position, no one came to visit me, except Lucas. At least he was part of this meeting. Maybe I'll have at least one ally. I can only hope. My family was already assembled in the conference room, waiting. I informed them we were waiting on another guest to attend, so they began to whisper quietly among themselves. I know they had no idea what was happening, and to them I was just an outsider. No matter if I had the same blood flowing through my veins, that didn't matter to them. But when Jackson's parents entered the room, my uncle looked as if he had seen a ghost. It was now dawning on him why I called this meeting. This was not a family reunion. This was retribution. I was going to right a wrong done by this family, one case at a time. Once the meeting was called to order, I began with a brief introduction and went over what I'd be discussing. My assistant gave me sound advice on how my father would deal with them when he had difficult news to convey. Don't give them a chance to argue. State your position on the matter as absolute and no room for bargaining. If you decide in the future to reassess, it would be revisited at a later date. Keep it short and sweet, was his advice. My secretary handed all of the attendees a folder. They started going through it immediately after it was placed on the desk in front of them. For the first time, my uncle didn't look like his normal composed self. He looked flustered. What's the meaning of this? He finally yelled out. The rest of the family started grumbling to each other and looking around, bobbing their heads up and down, showing their solidarity to my uncle. As you can see in the attached documents, it says Mr. Young was supposed to receive 5 shares plus a percentage for his invention. Although this is just a draft between him and grandfather, it can be defended in court, since we're actually using his product. Where did you get this? It's a forgery. My uncle yelled out again. Can you tell me then, how many people have access to grandfather's stamp? I waited, but no one answered. They just looked to each other, bewildered. Lucas finally chimed in. How can we tell this is real? It has already been authenticated through the courts. We wouldn't be here if it hadn't, I assure you. So, I've made all the necessary adjustments to rectify this. This family had done a grave injustice to Mr. Young and his family. It has been proposed to the board to remedy it. Because our family alone have done this, we will not burden the other shareholders with this. So, each of us will be contributing to the compensation. Is this some sort of joke? This number is astronomical. How can we possibly pay him back all this money? My third uncle cried out. Which was expected from him since he was going to be negatively affected by this decision. He was going to lose a huge chunk of his allowance and that was unthinkable to him. He was money hungry, not ambitious at all. As you can see in the proposal, I have allocated a certain percentage of our allowance to go directly to paying this compensation. All of us will do this, I said resolutely. That's easy for you to say, you're used to being poor. How do you expect us to live with such little money for the next few years? My cousin said. I think they called her Kai. Poor people like me call it budgeting. I said coolly. It's only for 3 years. I'm sure you will survive. In fairness, this family went years without what was due to them. And it should also be noted that we all have absorbed their shares, and if I could legally take it from you, I would. But this was the only fair way to right this wrong. The entire conference room grumbled in frustration at my words. Only Jackson's parents looked pleased by the turn of events. It was a long time coming. My family had stolen years of precious time from their family and no amount of money could ever repay them, truly. When the meeting was finally dispersed, Lucas gave me a thumbs up and indicated he was going to be calling me. The rest of the family stormed out, frustrated and angry. Mr. and Mrs. Young, Jackson's parents, waited to speak to me. You've done so much for our family, I can't thank you enough, Mrs. Young said first. Thank you, she kept bowing to me. This is only right. Your family deserved this. I wish I could have done more. Please accept my apology on behalf of my family, I said. Then she grabbed me in the warmest hug I've had since I arrived. It was a mother's hug, a hug I got countless times from my own mother. This made me miss her very much. She will be thrilled to know that I am correcting the hardship my family has inflicted on so many people. I hope she will be proud of me. Mr. Young came up to me and hugged me. His wife and I looked at each other surprised. This was a big step in the right direction, I thought. Thank you for helping my family and doing what's right. I know you can't help what blood you have running through your veins, but I won't hold that against you anymore. He smiled at me and they both left. So, that's it for now. Jackson and I are still going strong, though his father still doesn't know we're dating. But we plan to tell him soon. His mother and sister thinks I'm a hero, but it's nothing like that at all. It was just the decent thing to do. Right was right and wrong was wrong. This is what my father taught me while growing up. My new family seemed to have been morally corrupt. It never seemed wrong for my uncle to steal his college friend's invention and claim it as his own. And when Mr. Young agreed not to make it public and sign the non-disclosure agreement, my uncle still couldn't appreciate that one humane gesture. In his mind, he did nothing wrong. It was the survival of the fittest, at the end of the day. It seems that everyone is mad at me right now, except Lucas. When we talked later that day, he commended me for being strong and standing up to our family. We laughed as he recalled our uncles' and cousins' cries and wails about being poor now. Which couldn't be further from the truth. It just pained them to do the right thing and pay the debt that was long owed. Hopefully, when they think about it more, they will come to terms with it and willingly do the right thing and not hold this as another blot against me. Maybe they will genuinely want to get to know me one day, or maybe not.
Thanks for listening to my story. Come back for more stories and help our channel grow. Bye.